Bruno, I know you have a deep, rich history with motorsports and NASCAR and the work you've been doing, but where did it all start for you? How did you get interested in motorsports in the first place? And we'll go from there.
Well, to give you a little bit of my backstory, I'm from Portugal, not Spain, like Mike just said on the during qualifying the other day. But I don't care. I was Spanish that day. I don't care. But I'm being from Portugal. I'm not from the mainland Portugal. I'm from the Azores, Terceira Island, to be more specific. And maybe some of your listeners know where that is. The Azores is a group of 9 islands that belongs to Portugal and is right in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean between Europe and North America. And in Terceira, we have an Air Force base that was used by the United States from the end of the Second World War until just a few years ago. But because of what's happening in the Middle East, we have a lot of Americans here in the island at the moment. So I kind of grew up with American culture all around me, but I had no idea about NASCAR until 1992 when I was 11 years old and I watched Days of Thunder for the first time. Like most people that are not American, it's either Cars, Talladega Nights, or Days of Thunder in my case. And I became obsessed with NASCAR at the moment I watched that movie. And then 1 or 2 years later, I started watching the races. And because of the Air Force Base, they had the Armed Forces Network around the world for the military, and half of the island could catch the signal of the American TV station. So on Sundays, I would go with my dad to the golf club. He would play. I would watch American cartoons a year before they came to Portuguese TV. And sometimes I would catch a glimpse of NASCAR races also, especially the Daytona 500. And but I was already watching on European networks NASCAR. And the comics, they started way later. I started doing comics about every type of racing around the mid 2000s. I worked for Robbie Gordon's social media website that he had in the late 2000s, early 2010s. I was doing the banners and also started doing some cartoons about the Dakar Rally that he used to go race every January. And that kind of made me start doing a little bit more of NASCAR stuff. I used to have a blog that would I would post, but only in 2019 did I start doing the comics regularly like I do today. And that's when I also started publishing them on social media in English, which is important because I'm Portuguese. And if I publish them in Portuguese, nobody would care about it because NASCAR is still a very small niche here in Portugal. And so I started in English. Someone saw one of the comics in the early days and published and shared it somewhere. I think it was on. I don't remember if it was on X or maybe somewhere else, and it kind of started like a snowball, and people in the industry started commenting on them. A couple drivers. Then I started seeing the followers, and I would have people from journalists to drivers to people in NASCAR in general following me. I don't have big following, but uh, my comics usually reach a few thousand people, tens of thousands of people every week.
Truly the power of social media, because that's how I
Yes,
discovered you initially. Yes. And
yeah, that's how most people discovered me was through social media.
Well, I'm glad I ended up there because ever since I first saw your comics, I've been probably one of your most loyal follows. Every week I look forward to to the comics. So I feel like I'm opening the Sunday paper. It's the equivalent nowadays for us being on social media. But I'm curious how did the comics actually like start? What was the first do you remember like the first time that you put one together? You said you started doing them in Portuguese first and then eventually switched it over to English.
Yeah, the ones I did in Portuguese weren't really about NASCAR. Well, when I was a kid watching Days of Thunder, I probably did the movie in comic book form like 3 or 4 times, but I don't have any of that anymore. But the first comic I remember doing was about Carl Edwards in the Montreal race when it was raining a lot and he used a Swiffer to clean the windshield back in 2008, maybe. I posted that on my blog at the time. But the current ones, the first thing I did was maybe around the 2018 Daytona 500. I did a couple, but then in 2019, the first one I remember really doing was Atlanta race, the first Atlanta race of the season, because Truex was complaining at the end because of I think it was Stenhouse that was blocking him with air, and Stenhouse was a lap down, but Truex was like half a mile behind Stenhouse, and I took that and made a little comic about it, and then it kind of started from there.
What a journey it has been for you as we're talking to Bruno Rafael this week here on Let's Go Racing. So I got to ask you, Bruno, what does NASCAR's following kind of look like in Spain?
Spain, not Portugal. uh, yes. When I started working on TV, I, you didn't have much people watching. Right now, the numbers are growing. You can see it. If you go to social media, you'll find a lot of motorsports fans that have on their avatars Kyle Busch or Jimmy Johnson. And that's something interesting because if you watch NASCAR outside of the United States, in my opinion, you really are a motorsports fan. You watch everything. You spend your entire weekend watching Formula One, WRC, NASCAR, IndyCar, whatever. While people that usually are F1 fans, they will not watch anything else. It's the same with NASCAR fans in the United States. They hardly ever watch anything outside of NASCAR. So you really have to be in that small niche of people that watch all of motorsports. But even motorsports here, it's not that big. Formula One, yes, but to give you an example, probably at the bigger races in F1, you'll have 200,000 people watching on TV. We're only 10 million. So it's that much. NASCAR, I can't, because of the hours also, NASCAR races, the Cup races usually start around 7 to 8 p.m. Uh, Truck Series midnight, 1, 2 p.m., 2 a.m. So those races, you only have maybe a couple thousand people watching, but that's the norm here.
So that's a great kind of segue into my comment, really of what it kind of takes to follow NASCAR in Portugal. You mentioned kind of having to, ping off of the airbase internet or
Yeah, yeah.
satellite, right, to be able to watch
No,
early on.
antenna. At the time, it was
Yeah.
the old antenna style.
Really old
So
school
Yeah,
there.
so
yeah,
I
yeah,
ca- I feel like in the United States nowadays with getting the streaming services and jumping around from
yeah.
channel to channel like they've done over the last decade or so, I feel like it's getting more and more difficult for like a casual viewer to like find it and follow it and watch it. I can only imagine being in somewhere like Portugal. I mean, it's got to be difficult to even
Uh,
follow the schedule.
Not really. It's actually the other way around because the contract here is the full season on the same network. So you'll have right now it's Sport TV where I used to work, and they'll show all 38 races from Cup, all the races from Xfinity or Rally this year, and trucks. So in Europe usually the contracts are not like in the United States. But in the beginning, when I started watching in the 90s, we would only have the usually highlight shows and races from ESPN and ABC. You couldn't watch the Daytona 500 and all the TNN races from the old days from Mike Joy. You wouldn't watch. So
Wow.
it's kind of in some ways it's better, but we only have the races. We don't have practice. We don't have qualifying and other shows. So it's just the races.